Welcome to Pyrography Made Easy. I'm Brenda. In this tutorial episode, I'm going to explain how to create the high heel artwork I did. During the tutorial, I may use terms that are unfamiliar to you, such as pull-away strokes or uniform strokes. If you're unfamiliar with my terminology, in the comments below I put a link to a tutorial that explains them. There is a written tutorial and a free pattern on my website for this artwork. The written tutorial will cover a few items that I'm not going to cover here, like prepping the wood. Instead, we will start after the trace lines have been burned in. Now, before we start burning, I wanted to give you some insight into how I convert color to brown tones. I also wanted to explain why I changed the color of the shoe liner. Well, let's discuss that. Here's the reference photo I'm using. To convert red to brown, I pick a spot that represents a pure color of red. By that I mean it doesn't have a tinge of white or black in it. To me, that spot is found on the toe box, and a black arrow marks the spot in the photo. For lack of a better term, I call this the base color. When I burn that spot on the artwork, it will become the brown tone equivalent of the red base color. I used the base color to help me determine the tonal values on the rest of the shoe. For example, look at the spot the yellow arrow is pointing and do a color comparison with the base color. Is this depression area the same as, lighter than, or darker than the base color? I think it's a few shades darker than the base color. Do the same thing for this area. What do you think? Again, I think it is darker than the base color. In fact, I think it is quite a bit darker than the base color. Well, let's take this one step further by comparing the two areas against each other. How do they compare? I think that the lower area, marked by the white arrow, is a lot darker than the one above. When I burn in this area on the shoe, I will need to make the depression area darker than the base color, but lighter than the area below it. Here's the reference photo again, and notice that the shoe liner is very pale in color. Yet I deliberately burned the liner dark in my artwork. Why? Two reasons. First, a pale object against a pale or unburned background lacks contrast, so it doesn't show up well. To fix this, I either have to darken the liner or darken the background. In this case, it would be much faster to darken the liner. Secondly, I didn't like the current focal point. When I looked at the reference photo, the first thing my eyes noticed was the super pale spot at the bottom of the shoe. So making the liner dark fixes the contrast issue and changes the focal point to the vivid red color of the shoe. Okay, let's start burning. Begin by darkly burning along the edge of the sole. Make sure to keep the pen tip in optimal position as you do this so that the edges are crisp and clean. Rotate the wood as needed to keep the pen tip in optimal position as you burn along the edges of the shoe sole. After burning along both edges, fill in the area between the lines. The sole is very dark, so burn this area to a dark brown or black color. With the liner, begin by burning darkly along the edges and then fill in the liner so that it is dark brown to black in color. Burn the bottom liner dark next to the red shoe, but let the color fade a little near the seam. The seam is where the bottom and the side of the liner touch. Finish burning darkly along the rest of the liner edges. Along the top edge of the toe box liner, the seam thickness can be seen. Burn along the very top of this seam and then burn in the entire seam thickness so it is medium brown in color. Lastly, use uniform strokes to burn the rest of the liner side to a dark brown or black color. I do want to point out that while I explained my reasons for altering the color of the shoe liner, you do not have to replicate what I did. If you prefer the look of a pale liner, then burn the liner so that it is light tan in color. The method for burning in the liner doesn't change. Instead, just alter how dark you burn it. Burn along the top edge of the toe box. Make it tan in color and keep your pen tip in optimal position when burning along the edges of the shoe. Also, remember to rotate the wood as needed while burning around the contours of the shoe. There is a dark line just above the reflection that's along the bottom of the toe box. This line should be the same color as the dark spot on the side of the shoe that I'm currently burning in. Also, burn in the dark band near the toe box opening. I didn't get that step recorded on video. Burn around the reflection lines on the toe box. There are two of them. The long thin one that runs along the length of the toe box and the crescent-shaped one on the side. Then fill in the rest of the toe box to the base color using uniform strokes. Notice how I'm reburning over the area and slightly overlapping my strokes to even out the color and eliminate individual stroke marks. Darken up the toe and let the color fade to the base color about an inch or 2.54 centimeters from the edge. Lastly, lightly burn over all of the reflections on the toe box. Burn along the edge of the cast shadow and then burn in the shadow to a uniform brown color. Make sure that the shadow is several shades lighter than the sole. Otherwise, it will look like it is part of the shoe instead of a shadow. Begin by burning a thick line just below the reflection on the heel. As I'm burning, I will mention that a color comparison was done before I started burning, so let's do that now. Look at the reference photo in the corner and compare the heel with the base color. Is it darker or lighter? To me, the heel is several shades darker than the base color. Use uniform strokes to burn the heel to a solid uniform color. To get really smooth looking burn results, keep the heat set to medium-low and burn lots of overlapping uniform strokes. Build up the color slowly. For reference, my burner goes up to 10 and I had it set around 3. After you burn in the heel, do another color comparison. If it's not dark enough, then reburn over it again. Again, after you're done, do another color comparison. It may take several rounds of burning and color comparing before the proper color is achieved. Next, we'll work on the back of the shoe. Begin by burning along the lower portion of the shoe back and continue along the lower edge of the dark area. In the center of this area is a dark patch that marks the start of the streak running down the side of the shoe. Burn in this spot. Move to the opposite end of the streak and begin to burn it in. Make sure to keep the pen tip in optimal position while burning along the edges of the streak. The shoe looks reflective because of clearly defined contrast, so sharp, clean edges are needed to replicate this look. The lower portion of the streak is a few shades darker than the top. You can see this emerging in the video. Finish filling in the dark area on the back of the shoe. Use circular motion to blend out the dark spot that marked the beginning of the streak. Now burn in the depression area, but avoid the stitching. Remember, the depression area is darker than the base color, but lighter than the dark area below it. Use pull-away strokes along the back of the heel. Start the stroke on the edge of the heel and pull them towards the shoe toe. Repeatedly burn over the area to fill in and smooth out the color. Use uniform strokes on the reflection to give it a light tan color, and then use circular motion around the edges to transition that color. Switch to a writer pen tip to burn along the seam of the toe box. Then burn tiny dots between the stitches. Then burn around each stitch, adding the dots between the stitches as needed. Work your way up the side of the shoe, burning around the stitches and burning dots between them. I noticed that I didn't darken up the depression enough, so I'm fixing that by burning over it. I'm really concentrating on the area below the stitching. Use a shader pen tip to lightly burn over the stitches. Next, burn the upper reflection on the side of the shoe. Now, of course, a color comparison should be done before starting, so let's do that while I burn. Look at the reference photo in the corner and compare the side reflections to the base color. What do you think? To me, they both look paler than the base color. The top reflection seems lighter near the depression area than it does along the sides by the stitching. Burn in the lower reflection. We already know it is paler than the base color, but now compare it to the top reflection. When I do this, I think the lower reflection is a shade or two darker than the top one. When burning along the bottom edge of the lower reflection, avoid the highlight just above the heel. Also, avoid burning next to the sole along the shoe side. Leave a thin band of unburned wood along here. I used uniform strokes to burn in the side of the shoe because that method works best for me when I want uniform color that is devoid of texture. Now, while this method works best for me, if there is a different burn method that works best for you, then use it. As I've said before in this video, repeatedly burning over the area and slightly overlapping the strokes is a great way to produce a nice, smooth-looking burn. Along the bend of the shoe, there is a dark streak on the bottom. As you work in the area, make sure to burn it a little darker than the reflection. Lightly burn over the unburned section next to the sole. Burn in the lower reflection along the bottom of the toe box. Lastly, Lightly burn over the reflections on the heel. Then critically look at your artwork and decide if it needs any fine-tuning. When I critically looked at my artwork, I decided there were several areas that needed to be a touch darker and the color evened out a little. Before I made the decision to fine-tune the artwork, I put the art on a shelf for a day or two without looking at it. Then I removed the artwork and looked at it with fresh eyes, comparing it to the reference photo. Now, as I said, what I did was darken areas and fix a couple areas that looked a little blotchy. Even the blotchy areas were fixed by simply reburning over them. Well, that's it for this tutorial. I hope you found the information I provided useful. I wanted to explain the processes that I use and the reasons behind some of my choices. And I hope I succeeded and that it helps you with your own artwork. Another thing I strive to do is provide a wide range of subjects to burn since everybody has different interests. So if there is something you would like to see, just let me know. Well, in the remarks below, I provided a link to my website, Pyrography Made Easy. The website has the written tutorial, reference photo, and the free pattern for this artwork. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe to my channel. I have a new video every Tuesday, and at least once a month, if not more often, I post a tutorial video. See you next week.